The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon. This is Lori Fox. We're going to get started in just 1 minute.
Hi, Lori. Just doing a sound check again.
I can hear you, Vicki. We got Vicki on the line.
Yay!
Okay, so welcome to our webinar. Everyone is muted by default. The session is being recorded. Yes, good. It's still recording. And next week, we'll be putting it up on our YouTube channel for people to view it. If you have a question, you can ask it in the questions tab. So, and also you can raise your hand to be unmuted at question time. Can everyone either raise your hand or say hello to me in the question field so I know that you can hear me? I see some hands. Hello, Andrew and Richard. Thank you very much. The first few minutes when you don't hear anything back, it always makes me panic a little bit. So I have just a few announcements before I turn it over to our presenter. First of all, our first SIGUCCS virtual conference is going to be November 10th. We had originally planned it for April, but something happened in early April and we all got really busy and decided this is not a good time. So we will be together on November 10th. Also, you may have heard that our annual conference has been moved to a spring time frame. We're going to be in San Diego in March, which I'm sure is going to be beautiful. And our March book club is just about ready to talk about the book that we read over the last 2 months. This has been a very interesting book, The Subtle Art of Not Getting an F or Not Giving a F-bomb. The discussion will begin in Slack, actually, probably over the weekend. We have a hangout scheduled for next week. And I encourage you to join our discussion even if you didn't read the book, because the discussions are always fantastic and you learn things even if you didn't read the book. We've been on an every other month schedule, and the next book we're going to read is 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. We are soliciting nominations for our upcoming awards cycle, both the Penny Crane Award for Distinguished Service and Hall of Fame Awards. The forms are up and you can nominate your colleagues for these awards. And the Communication Awards process, and this is a self-nomination process. Those are due in mid-October. One fantastic thing about the Communication Awards is each submission is evaluated by a team, and you get feedback on your submission whether you win first place or not. So I'll tell you just personally, I had submitted our digital self-help documents a few years in a row, and each year I took those suggestions and modified our site, and actually on the 3rd year I won an award. So definitely the feedback helped me and it helped my campus improve our communication. We have several more webinars planned for this summer. These are replays and representations of things that we've seen at previous SIGUCCS conference. Many times it's great to see what has happened since the last conference. Becky, Mo, and Christy are 3 fantastic presenters, and I encourage you to watch for the signups for those. Those are going to be fantastic. Just a reminder that membership in SIGUCCS has many benefits, including participating in the mentoring program. And here are all the different ways you can stay connected with SIGUCCS. We have a web page from our main site called Connect, that has links to our Facebook community, Twitter, and our email listserv. And also, we've been quite active in Slack. A few new channels have been created in the last couple of months. One on business continuity and another one on work from home, where we talk about aspects of our professional lives that are different now that most of us are working remotely. So I encourage you to join Slack. It's a great place to be. Kathy, did it not show my slides at all? Okay. Yep, I was showing slides. Well, I gave you all of the announcements anyway, so we're in good shape here, Vicki. I'm going to make Vicki presenter.
Okay. This is the weird transition part that
It is.
we're
It
gonna make
is.
it
I can see your desk. Vicki, are you good with questions in the middle? Because I can keep an eye on questions and pop in.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. How's that looking?
We've got it.
Yay!
Good job. Well, you're already one ahead of me. And Caitlin
So
can see your screen. Okay, good. I'm going to mute myself, but I'll pop in if we get questions.
Okay, thanks, Lori. Thanks so much for having me. I just love SIGUCCS. So it's funny, Lori and I are Facebook friends, and this morning I complained about how awful my day was, and she immediately commented and said she was sorry for contributing to that. And I said, no, this is the best part of my day. I'm so excited to be here. And I just want to confess to you guys up front that I have trouble with these webinars. I'm one of those people that likes people. So I really like being in the room with people and feeling that energy and having that eye contact and seeing your body language. So I really struggle with webinars, but I made a commitment when I set my goals this year to really work on it. I knew that was an area I needed to work on. Little did I know that I was making some self-fulfilling prophecy that we would all be working remotely and everybody would have to learn to do this. So I don't think it's my fault all this happened, but it is interesting how that this has played out in my life. So you guys bear with me. I would really love feedback. So at the end of the presentation, I'll give you all my contact info. And we talk about at Georgia Tech how feedback is a gift and we live it. So I would appreciate any feedback you have about the presentation. So that being said, let's get started. I did just complete a presentation to our IT organization. I mean, literally 5 minutes ago, I finished. And it was to 600 people online. So you guys feel a little safer somehow. So what we're going to talk about today is the original title for this particular presentation was Teaching an Old Yellow Jacket New Tricks. And I was trying to be clever and funny, you know, how teaching an old dog new tricks. And I don't know if you're familiar with Georgia and Georgia colleges, but there's two big schools, Georgia Tech and the other one. The other one they're the Bulldogs. And I have a special love for them too, but I won't bore you with that today. But so I thought I was being clever. I've since had some feedback that that's not a very clever topic. So, but I wanted to explain it. So what I really want to talk today about is change management, and it seems to get a bad rap. So I'm hoping I can change your mind today about that a little bit and learn some things too. So first, I do like to connect with people, and this is where I learned how to change my slides. There we go. So I will tell you that I want to put some images in your head. I have 20 years, more like 25 years of IT experience. So, I've worked in corporate, I've worked in higher ed, I've worked in corporate again, and now I'm back in higher ed. And higher ed is really my love. I've done a lot of different things in higher ed IT. Some would say it's time for me to go back to corporate. I really don't think I ever will. Laurie's seen me through some of my transitions, and I tell you, I really love what I'm doing now. I really love where I am. And I just can't say enough good things about it. And I can tell you that if you don't have that kind of fulfillment in your life, that once you find it, you won't want to leave either. So I've done a lot of graduate work in leadership and in diversity and inclusion, diversity in IT. So the other topic I talk about besides service management is women in IT. So if you're interested in going down that path with me, just shoot me an email or something and we'll talk. Oh, I didn't tell you about these people. So this is I've been married to this guy for nearly 29 years. I don't know why he puts up with me. I have 2 daughters, college daughters. The oldest one just graduated from college. And let me tell you, that is a great feeling. I said to my husband when she graduated, I said, I guess we did something right. And he said, well, no, it might be that she did it in spite of us. And I was like, thanks, honey. Appreciate that. Our other child is that little puppy down on the left. Her name is Belle. You might hear her because this is about the time she decides we need a snack. So she may come in at some point and have a few words for you. And I'd like to show this picture of me and my husband when I was a senior in high school, and that was us going to the prom. I like to show that picture because I was skinny then. Everybody should look at their skinny picture every now and then. All right, enough about that. So I work at a place called Georgia Tech. We are a public research institution in Georgia. We have about 33,000 students. From a demographic standpoint, we're about 2/3 male, 1/3 female. That's actually increasing every semester. It used to be a lot more male oriented because we are an engineering school. About 1/4 of our students are internationals, and we confer about 7,000 degrees a year. We've learned a whole lot this year, as I bet you all have, about distance education and about how to be there for your students during hard times, especially those international students. We had a lot of things that we had to consider when we vacated campus back a few months ago. We are part of a 26 institution university system of Georgia. We employ about 17,000 folks, and it mirrors our student population, about 2/3 male and 1/3 female. I like to bring up those numbers because they're always very interesting. So like I said, if you want to hear about that more, get in touch with me. So don't be confused with our big rival, which is the University of Georgia. We have what we call clean old-fashioned hate. In our fight song, it says "To hell with Georgia," and they live it and breathe it. What you should know is that my degree is from Georgia, so I'm not fully accepted. It's okay. Our mascot is Buzz the Yellow Jacket. Our first class had 84 male students, and just some interesting facts about us. Bobby Dodd was our coach for about 35 years. He served at Georgia Tech for nearly 60 years. He was elected to the College Football Hall of Fame as both a player and a coach, and there's only 4 people that have that designation. So we take college football very seriously in the South. You may, where you are too. The Heisman Trophy, the trophy everybody wants, was named for John Heisman, who coached basketball, baseball, and football at Georgia Tech. So, all right, enough about that. So Georgia Tech IT, we do have distributed IT. We have about 350 central IT employees and a total of it's really more like 650 IT employees across the institute. That's where I just presented before this. We have lots of legacy systems, lots of institutional knowledge. People like to think of Georgia Tech as the latest and greatest and state of the art, and we do some really cool things. There's some amazing research that happens at Georgia Tech. In fact, our research corporation in patents and trademarks, they lead globally in the kinds of things we do. That said, the IT department is much like many of your IT departments. We have a lot of things that are homegrown. We have a lot of things that have been around a long time. And I work with all kinds of people that have been at Georgia Tech for 30 and 40 years. So it's kind of this interesting mix of the old with the new. And we're, feeling our way through that right now. So I do want to tell you about one cool thing. If you ever come to Atlanta, we got to move into a new building last March. The IT department got a brand new building. I didn't think that happened in higher ed, but it did to us. And we're home of the world's largest spiral staircase. And so that's a picture of it. We're a world record holder, and it's a very cool building. So if you ever come to Atlanta, look me up. I'll be happy to show you around. All right. So today we're going to talk about why Georgia Tech implemented change management, how it works, some lessons learned. We'll talk a little bit about reporting, and then I'll just get real with you and let you know if we're happy with it and if we think it matters or not. Excuse me. You feel like you have to cover your mouth right even when you're not in person. All right. Sorry about that. That's what happens when you do 2 presentations in a row. All right, so let's talk a little bit about ITIL version 3. So I bet many of you are familiar with ITIL. It's a set of detailed practices for IT. It focuses on really aligning IT services with the business, really aligning the services with the customer and the business needs. In ITIL 3, there were 5 life cycle changes. I am so sorry. I don't think this has ever happened before. So IT service management consists of, in version 3, it consists of 5 life cycle stages. Strategy, design, transition, operation, and continuous improvement. But as I'm sure you know, we have transitioned to ITIL version 4 now. It was released early last year. And they did this cool thing with change management. They changed the way everybody thinks about it, because instead of calling it change management, they now call it change enablement. Doesn't that just make you feel better about it? I mean, it just makes you feel warm and fuzzy from.
It does. I feel very comfortable right now.
Thank you. I'm so glad.
I just wanted you to know. I could tell that you needed that feedback.
I do struggle with these webinars. See, we are growing and developing together. So they changed it to enablement. And what they're trying to do in version 4 and all over is to talk about IT's value. And that's really important. I mean, we as organizations have to continue to communicate and to show our value to the institutions we serve. So change control or change management may have been more about the bureaucracy of it, and I think that's why people struggle with it. Now we're moving to a place where it's more about what can change do for you? How can we structure and document change in a way that will really benefit our customers, our users? You know, Tom, I'm a little passionate about this. So why did we do change management at Georgia Tech? Well, interestingly enough, we didn't start change management at Georgia Tech until 2018, which is kind of late in the game. ITIL had already been out for quite some time. People have been talking about service management for a lot of years. But doing change management just hadn't been sold yet. And so what it took at Georgia Tech was an event. And I'll just be real honest with you. I was at SIGUCCS in the fall. We had an event where someone made a change to a major system, and they had their blinders on, and they thought, I'm going to type in a couple of lines of code, and it's not going to be that big a deal. And when they did it, it seemed invisible, and it started this domino effect of failures and problems and issues. And it took some time. And I mean, it took a week. It didn't just take a week. It took weeks to clean up what happened. And through that, senior leadership, you know, had a lot of questions to answer. Like, how in the world could this happen? You know, the Institute is counting on us to provide them systems and services. And so we took a step back from that event and said, what can we do better? How can we learn from this? And in the midst of all that was this champion for service management who was my boss for quite a while. He hired me at Georgia Tech 2 years ago. All this happened before me. But he believed in service management, and he kept preaching it over and over. So you guys know about your elevator speeches, how important they are to have this quick way that you can talk to people about things that you're passionate about. And so he had this constant elevator speech about change management and how important it was. And so he, along with some others, convinced leadership that one way that we could really address these unexpected events was to create a change process. So that sounds good, and I bet you understand that. There can be a great reason. You can have a champion. You can even have, something that happens that shows how bad you need something. But then you have to sell everybody. And so when you have 600 people in an organization, it's hard. It's culture change. And so it took some time. And I'll tell you, 2 years later, June 1st will be my 2-year anniversary. 2 years later, we're in a really good place, but it is a constant commitment to do change management and do it well. And so what that means is there's lots of documentation. You got to constantly review that documentation. And then you have to work on building relationships. So I think relationships are everything. So the first thing I did, my first 90 days there, was meet everybody, all the players. I did a lot of coffee and a lot of lunch, because it wasn't enough for our CIO to say, we're going to do change management. It takes so much more than that. So I want you, if you're not doing change management yet, or change enablement, I want you to consider that and think about that as we go through this. So what's the purpose of change management? It's really about standardized methods and procedures. But at the end of the day, when people ask me, why do we do change management? I say it's so we can provide great value to our organization. So at the Institute, I want the president to not get that middle of the night call that something's broken. I don't want it to end up on the cover of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution that nobody reads anymore, in paper form anyway. I don't want Georgia Tech to be on the front page of the paper because we had a major data leak, or we had a major failure in a system, or our police department couldn't access their databases to find out criminal information. I mean, there's all kinds of things that we have to think about. But so at the end of the day, change management is about providing that value and assessing risk in the changes that we do. Now, system administrators will often say it's about Big Brother, but we're working on that, and we'll have to keep working on it. What we really want to do is reduce those incidents, reduce that disruption, and have good documentation going forward. So ITIL says, and people ask me this all the time, so what exactly is a change? I mean, literally, I get asked everywhere I go. Well, a change, according to ITIL, is the addition, the modification, or the removal of anything that can have an effect on IT services. So if you kind of step back from that, you can say, oh, it's everything. But you have to get real about it. And I believe in the ITIL framework. I believe in service management best practices, but I also believe that your institution, your organization, has to look at what works for you. So while there is this prescribed set of best practices, you've got to think about, one size doesn't fit all. So for us, we had to say, in scope for us was anything that's in production or anything that's in non-production, but it's used by a whole bunch of people. And then we said any single user change or any brand new services will not be part of change management. So that means that if I need to change my password, you could make the argument that it's a change, but of course you can't do a change control on every password reset. So no, it's not a single user change. And for service additions, some people track those as changes. We don't. We let those go through our project management office. So I work hand in hand, and I have a weekly meeting with our director of project management to make sure that we're in tune with those new service offerings, but that isn't something that we track in change management. I'm going to pause a minute. Any questions so far?
We did have a comment from Caitlin, who works in the basement, that she's pretty impressed with your new building.
I have worked in the basement too. I worked in like a supply closet once. Yeah, pretty awful places. The IT usually gets those basements and those bad places, but we come to work for Georgia Tech. It's pretty awesome. You know what?
I think it's going to be changing. I
Yeah.
think people have really seen our value in the last 2 months, and I think it's going to be changing.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, it has changed. We're all sitting in our, in our home offices or our bedrooms or our dining rooms now.
That's true.
An hour and a half commute to Atlanta. I live almost on the Alabama line. And so now I don't have my commute and I actually miss it.
I do too. And you would not believe how late I get out of bed to come down to work at 8 o'clock. And I thought, how am I going to get up early enough to go into work at a normal time?
I know I've had the same thoughts. Like I used to get up at 4:35 and now I'm dragging out. Yeah, no, I understand. But everything's changing about the way we work, and so it's interesting. But do you know, I'm busier than ever. And I was afraid that by not seeing people, that people wouldn't turn in their changes and I'd have to catch people doing them. But that hasn't happened. I'm actually seeing more and more. I think it's encouraged people to be
Do you think maybe it's because they're not having those interactions with their colleagues, that when you work alone, sometimes it's nice to reach out to somebody to say, I have this change?
Maybe it may be because we don't have those coffee conversations anymore. And it may also be that people are trying to really show or demonstrate how much work they're doing, and that's one of the things that I tell people.
That's a good point. Yes.
Is that, hey, don't look at it as a bad thing. Look at it as an opportunity to show what you're doing. I mean, if you did 14 changes last week, then how can anybody question your work? I mean, use it as an excuse to need more help or something. All right, so the next question I get, besides what is a change, is what is a type of change. I had this ongoing argument with our director of identity management. His team doesn't really like to put in changes, so it's a friendly argument. But he'll say this should be a standard change, and so a lot of people think things should be standard changes, but it's that perception thing of what I think is standard may not be what somebody else thinks is standard. So we define the types of changes, and ITIL gives you some guidelines around this. They actually say there's 3 types of changes. We added an additional. So a normal change is one that follows just a normal timing, the normal approvals, the normal process. Normal. I like to say I wouldn't know normal if it jumped up and slapped me in the face, or normal is a setting on the jar, but we do have normal changes. The way you get a standard change is you have 3 examples of a normal change that are low risk, and we'll talk about risk in a minute, that are successful. And then it can be called a standard change. And so we have a whole catalog of standard changes. And where you want to see the volume of these is you want your standard changes to be the most changes you do. You want that line to be really big. And then you want your normal changes to be next. And Belle has joined me and she's growling, so she thinks it's time for a snack. An urgent change is something that needs to be done quickly, as soon as possible. But now, lots of people think their things are urgent. I had a conversation this afternoon with a system administrator who said, I need to turn in an urgent change. How fast can I get it approved? And I said, how fast do you need it approved? And he said, we need to do it today. And I said, well, we actually have a process to follow for urgent changes. The dog. That's one thing I've loved about working at home and seeing other people work at home is you can see their pets and their children. And I think that's really made us connect in a new way. All right, urgent changes. Urgent change, we say, is not urgent just because you say it is. It has to be urgent because there's an audit reason. We got an auditor coming in, they tell you got to do something. There's a security concern. You want to fix those pretty fast. There's a urgent business process. So in higher ed, what this means is the registrar has a patch that has to go to the student database, and they want it done now. So of course, we're going to do that quickly. And then the fourth reason would be a pending service disruption. I see that this particular service is about to fail, so I need to apply this change. The way we deal with urgents is we have a CAB, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute too. And if I get an urgent request, I send it out to CAB immediately. And if I get 3 of them to approve, then we approve the urgent and let them go forward with it. I do make it really visible to the organization, though, so that it kind of discourages people from abusing that. And it works really well for us now. Now, we added an emergency change, and some people don't do this. An emergency change is the sky has fallen Chicken Little. Something bad has happened. My student information system's down. There's no Wi-Fi in the dorms. There's you all can imagine the emergency. And I don't have time to fill out a change request. What I've got to do is fix the problem. And then we will put the Band-Aids on later. These are very rare. For us, they only happen 1 or 2 times a month, whereas we do between 200 and 300 changes a month. This might be 1 or 2 of them. And the way that we deal with it is if someone makes an emergency change, they make a change to a system or a service without previous permission, then within 24 hours, they have to put in that emergency change. And then it goes through a real post-implementation process where we as a CAB and the change manager look at it, make sure it's really an emergency. Often emergency changes will set in motion a root cause analysis or some other type of process to help us see what really happened so we can learn from it. So
has your number of emergency and urgent changes gone down the longer you're in this process?
Yes, I'm so glad you asked that. And I'll talk about that in lessons learned. But yeah, I mean, everything was an emergency 2 years ago. Everything was. Nobody wanted to plan. People don't like to plan. But now, like I said, we're down to a very, very low number. And the reason why it matters is emergency changes aren't communicated. And that's one of our big hinge points in IT is that we do things without telling people we're going to do them. What we found at Georgia Tech, and I bet you'd find at your place too, is our stakeholders, our users, they will accept a lot of things as long as you tell them in advance. If you communicate well and you prepare them for what's going to happen, it's not nearly as upsetting as them, a student logging in and finding out they can't take their tests because the online system's down. But this is something we had to really work on. When we plan big changes, I had the most interesting, this happened a couple of times. It doesn't happen as much anymore, but we were planning for a big change that was going to basically take down all of our major systems on campus. And one of the things we do when we do a big change like that is we do a dry run. So a couple of days before it's going to happen, we all sit in a room together and we talk through it like a tabletop exercise to see how we will navigate through the process. This happens a lot with big network changes. And we were sitting in the tabletop and we had told the campus that we were going to take everything down at 7 p.m. and that it would be back up by midnight. And so we were sitting in this tabletop dry run exercise, and I said, okay, who's going to go first? And the people over the banner system, which is the student database system, said, all right, we're going to start taking everything down at 6:30. And I said, no, 7 o'clock. And he said, but if we're going to start at 7 o'clock, we have to have everything down before we start. And there was this like aha moment of we don't all view things the same way. So I had to say, no, we told the students that we're going to take the system down at 7 o'clock. What happens to that student when they log on to submit that paper that's due at 6:45, thinking they got 15 minutes to spare, and they can't because the system's already down? And so it was really just it was just an exercise in understanding how we communicate and why that can be important. And of course, I have college age kids, so I know how important those deadlines are, and I bet you guys do too. So let's talk a little bit about the risk assessment. The risk assessment is what we use to be consistent about how we assess risk. And that sounded kind of redundant, but so an example that I like to think about is, think of your busy, whatever your town is, a major intersection in your town. So in Atlanta, I'm sure you've heard about the traffic. Our building sits on Spring Street and 5th Street, which is a pretty major intersection in Midtown Atlanta. I know when I walk to that intersection on the sidewalk, if I'm going to cross over one of those streets, on one side, I know that the walk sign works. On the other side, I know there's not a walk sign. But I've been on that street for so long, for so many times, that I know how to watch the light and know how the traffic's going to flow. And I can assess that risk. If you were a stranger coming into Atlanta, maybe you were very familiar with Boston traffic, you might not know that. So you would be a little more cautious about that risk. And so that's important to think about in change management, is that we all come with these different perspectives, our background, our experiences, whatever our specialty is. So often a system admin will say, I'm just changing a line of code. But our cybersecurity guy will go, yeah, but that code could expose us to blah. Or the student would say, yeah, but that's when I use the system the most. And so these are all things that we have to think about with risk. So the way we did it at Georgia Tech, and we copied Stanford, just so you know, is that we created this risk assessment. And I'll be happy to share that with you guys if you want to just message me or let SIGUCCS know, and they can tell me to get it to you. It's a 7-question risk assessment where it asks questions like, if this change were to fail, how many people would it impact? And it asks 7 different questions, all have a score, and then that score totals up to the risk. And it's either low, medium, or high. So it's not the student saying this is high risk, and it's not the sysadmin saying this is low risk. It's based on these series of questions, how can we really assess that risk in a consistent way? And so from there, so that risk is never determined just by an individual's perception. It's determined based on this. Now, some places use impact and urgency matrices, and they work too. So I would encourage you to do a little looking around on that.
Would you be willing to share your questionnaire?
Absolutely, yeah.
All right.
More than happy. In fact, I'll share my whole change management process document.
We'll get there. Okay.
Yeah. All right. So then we have to think about approval cycles. Initially, we pretty much said, if you'll record it, we'll approve it fast, all is well. But when you're doing 300 changes a month, it's not really reasonable to work that way. So over time, we established a schedule for approval. Pretty much, we want a week's lead time on a low risk, 2 weeks lead time on a medium risk, and we want 45 days on a high risk change. And that sounds like a really long time, but for us, a high risk is only about 2% of the changes we do all year. And those are the kind of changes that put you on the cover of the newspaper or the front page of the paper, or, you know, the leading story in the Atlanta News. And so we wanted to make sure that we get plenty of time to communicate, to assess risk, to do those dry runs, to make sure that all of our ducks are in a row. and I see a typo on my screen. Don't you hate that when you're presenting and you see a typo? And I've used these slides before.
I don't see it. I don't see
you
it at
don't?
all. No, I
Let
don't.
me show you where it is.
No, I know where it is. I saw it right away. Come on.
So we want to create an environment where people are planning, we're making good decisions, and it really is a culture change at the end of the day. If you're not used to it, it is a change. So in our document that I'll share with you, we talk about defined roles, the process owner, the manager, we have requesters and implementers, and then we have CAB members. And CAB is the cornerstone, and that's what people think about when you say change management. CAB's job is to assess risk. Our CAB convenes every week. We meet on Wednesdays at 10 a.m. We used to meet for 2 hours every week when I first started, and we went line by line through every change, and it was an exhaustive process. And I'll tell you now, we usually only meet about once a month for about a half hour. I've slotted, well, I have the schedule slot there for Wednesdays at 10, but we often don't meet. We didn't meet this week because now we've gotten so much better at the process, and so we do a lot of the approvals happen, on their own time, and we don't necessarily have to discuss them. We do meet and discuss high risks or things that people have questions about. So our CAB is made up of the change manager and then a senior representative from different areas across the organization. Well, not just the organization, but across the whole institute. So like I said, we're distributed IT. So we have representatives within our centralized IT from like data operations, networking, enterprise apps, cybersecurity, the service desk. And then we add a couple of distributed IT directors. So like the College of Engineering has their own little separate IT group. We have the director of the College of Engineering's IT in there, and then College of Computing as well. We rotate those positions about every year just to make sure everyone has involvement. We've added we have a communications director within IT, which is a wonderful position. I have a great relationship with her, and she's joined CAB so that she's right there as we're talking about changes, and she can facilitate the communication that needs to happen in different ways across campus. And our library is kind of its own separate unit. I bet many of you work the same way, so we've added the director of IT from the library, and that's been really helpful for us. So all of our changes require 6 things: a justification, a plan, risk and impact testing, a backup plan, and a communication plan. And when I started 2 years ago, I would get these change requests and they would say, business justification, I need to do it. Implementation plan, I'm going to do it. Risk and impact, none. Testing plan, none. Backup plan, can't back it out. Communication plan, 1 word, email. Come on. So we've had to work through that. It's been interesting. Ideally, your business justification should make sense to anybody, not in IT. So it's not a technical description. It's we need to apply patch to this database so that the latest security vulnerabilities will not be there. An implementation plan, though, is very technical, and it is really, if I were to get hit by a bus, somebody else could step in my place and follow that plan and get it done. Now, this is something that we struggle with. Even still, we have to there's a balance between too much and not enough. So we still continue to work on this. The risk and potential impact, we have a risk assessment, but what we want in this particular box is for them to really describe what could happen, what will happen, how much time things will be down, and things like that. Now, I don't know about y'all, but we're higher ed and we're a public institution, so we don't have the luxury of a whole lot of test environment. Excuse me. So we often don't do great tests. I hate to say it. It just sounds so awful, but it's really the way it is for us. So what we do though, and what I've taught my users to do, is to say if they can't test it or they don't have a test environment, say that. I can't test this because we don't have a test environment. And then that's data that's in place that you can use going forward to say, hey, if this thing screwed up or if it messed up something, if we'd had a proper testing environment, we could have avoided that. And then that's a real good reason to start talking about throwing some money at something. So we really do. I report on all this. We talk about it. It really can inform business decisions.
We have a question, Vicki.
Yay!
Have you found a correlation between detailed implementation plans and how quickly a change becomes routine?
That's a really good question. By the way, you say that's a really good question when you want more time to think about it.
That's true.
I think so. Yeah, because when I think about the people that submit things with these detailed implementation plans, they're the ones that are they've really considered every angle and they're really thinking through the process. And in doing that, it creates a playbook for the next time. So my communication collaboration team, the team that runs Office 365 for us, they are some of the best change submitters because they are so detailed in what they do. And they also hardly ever have failures. So there's definitely, I can't put real data with it, but I feel like those implementation plans really do help for moving toward a standard change or for success, for sure. That's a good thing. I need to think more about that. Thanks for that.
That was Sean Plummer.
Thanks, Sean Plummer. All right. So communication plan is not email. I want to know who you're going to tell, when you're going to tell them, what you're going to tell them. And now that we have the communication director involved, she works to do that. Because what does that do for you? I know you guys have had this happen. You feel like you tell everybody, you send so much email, you put posters up in the lobby. I'm kidding. Does anybody do that anymore? And then you go through you do exactly what you said you were going to do. You make the change, you do the update, whatever it is, and then the next day, the dean of the College of Business calls you and says, "We didn't know."
Absolutely. All the time.
Isn't it wonderful to go, well, no, actually. I mean, there's a good way to do that, but it does cover your bases. So those communication plans are really important. All right, reporting. So why do anything if you don't report on it, it didn't happen. I know y'all have heard that. It's the truth. So I report the hound out of this stuff because one, I think it's important, but it also really creates this sense of need and shows the value. And so I do a weekly forward schedule of changes, and I send them by email, and I hate it. I hate that I send them by email, but people seem to like them. I'm sure a lot of people probably filter it out. I'd filter it out if it was me. But the people that need to know that information see it in their inbox once a week. They know on Wednesday evenings they're going to get a forward schedule of changes. Now, I haven't talked about tool here because I don't think tool's real important. I'm not one of those people. We do use ServiceNow, but I think that you can use a whole lot of tools and make it work. And so there's reports built into the tool we use that people could subscribe to or go look at. But my leadership said from the beginning that they wanted people to get an email every week. And so that's what I do. And I everybody knows who I am. That's for sure, because I get an email from me every week. But I also report out on how many things are requested by type, by risk, by team. I work with managers of all the teams to give them monthly data around what their team's doing. We talk about canceled and denied changes, although I'll tell you, we hardly ever flat out deny a change. We often send changes back and ask them to change the schedule or work through some of the details, but we hardly ever do. We also do post-implementation reviews. I talked about that, where we review things. I just looked at the time and I got really nervous, so I sped up. But reporting is important. The reason, the way you want to approach reporting is to talk to your leadership and find out what they want and need. Don't just throw data at them. I kind of alluded to that, but talk to them about open up that communication process with them and make sure you're giving them what they need. So for us, we had some pretty big lessons learned in this process. First of all, top-down adoption and support is a must. If you've got one team that the CIO says doesn't have to do this, it won't work, because it has to be top-down and everybody has to participate. You need to be transparent. You're going to need that champion. I'm the change lady at Georgia Tech, and everybody knows it. You need clear, concise communication. It's not optional. You have to communicate. And IT people, I don't think, are very good at that all the time. So it's enlist some help if you're not good at it. Really put time in training, which is the first thing we cut when we have to cut our budgets, but it's important. Think about the process, not the tool. Acknowledge that change is hard, and not just change management, but just change. Everybody said, a lot of people will say, when I do this presentation in person, I'll say, how many of you like change? And not many people will raise their hand. And then the people, though, that do like change, what you find out is they like for other people to change. They don't want to change themselves. So it's like sitting in church and the preacher's preaching and he's telling you what you need to do in your life, and you're nudging your husband going, hey, you need to do what he says. That's what change is like. So you have to start continuous improvement from the beginning, and reporting is critical. So what did we see? We definitely saw an improved alignment of services to the Institute. We have a much better perception of IT around campus. We've done surveys and found out the things we're doing well, and this is one of them. We've really increased visibility and communications of changes. We've improved the way we assess risk. We don't have as many impacts from bad changes. Okay, so this is one of those sales presentations. Increased productivity of users as less disruption and higher quality services. I believe that, but that sounds like a really good sales pitch. And then we've definitely reduced the number of urgent and emergency changes. And so that has a real impact overall on the Institute. So the next thing we do, what are we doing now? We're in this cycle of continuous improvement. And so ITIL 4 gives you 7 questions to ask for continuous improvement, and I would encourage you to use those. I'm happy to show the presentation too. And so that's where we are now. What can we do better? You can always get better. And then here's my contact information. So please look me up. I like people. I like meeting new people. I'd love to talk to you about change or service management or women in IT. And I have 6 minutes left. Actually, I have lots, but
I have a question for you.
Okay.
Carl said that you are distributed IT, and how widely do you communicate among the different groups?
So that is a really good question. So we have what we call, our CIO has an IT leadership council. And so the directors, or the highest position within all of those distributed IT units, they get together once a month. And I include them on all of my change communication. So I include them on the forward scheduled changes. I include them on questions. I include them on urgent change notifications. So they get all of that communication. And then the communication director has defined, she calls them channels, defined channels of communication for, depending on how high the risk is or how high the impact is, how she communicates to campus. So it could go to the whole campus, or it could go to our institutes, marketing and communications department, for them to put in things like newsletters and emails and those kind of things. So over communicate is the way we look at it. So we just tell everybody as much as we can, as often as we can, but we definitely work hard to keep that relationship with those distributed IT leaders transparent and in a good place, because we depend on each other for success.
Do we have any other questions? I really appreciate you sharing your change story with us today, Vicki. I'm sure that, oh yeah, now here come the, I would love to talk more. Oh, Caitlin, you should talk to her about women in IT. She wrote a paper a few years ago about the topic, and then you came back for a second year and gave us more information. So if you go into the ACM digital library, you'll find information there as well. We'll see Vicki again. She's one of my favorite presenters, so I tend to tap her a lot to come back and share her stories with us. This will be available next week on YouTube. And Vicki, I'll see you online. I hope everybody has a great afternoon.
Thanks for having me.
All right.
Yeah.
Goodbye.
Bye, everybody.